Hi, this is an overview lecture for Unit 4. This is our final unit this semester, and our focus in this unit is intercultural and global communication in STEM leadership. So the goal for this unit is to try to find ways to adopt a global perspective on leadership in the STEM professions. So when we get into week 13, you have 3 readings assigned for this week. The first article examines models of indigenous leadership, invoking some comparisons and contrasts to traditional Western models. Second article is a qualitative study of some of the cultural aspects of peanut farming in Uganda, with a specific focus on different leadership roles of men and women in these agricultural practices. The third article is actually a study that's co-authored by me. It's a qualitative study based on 12 interviews with non-native English speakers in regard to their efforts to conduct medical and scientific research and publish their findings in English-only journals. As an overarching question for this week's readings, I encourage you to think about what are your preconceived notions about effective leadership. When you think of someone who is an effective leader without thinking of a specific individual, what does this image look like? And here are a few more images. These were returned from a search for effective leadership from a website that provides stock images. Try to include a mix, some of which are gender neutral and others which depict leadership in gender specific terms. But again, here my point in showing some of these images is to try and think what ideas you have about effective leadership, where do these come from, and which of these ideas might usefully be expanded to accommodate global and intercultural perspectives. So, looking more specifically now at the readings for week 13, this article on traditional midwifery addresses the 2 questions that are indicated on this slide. And here's my favorite quote from the article on how hard it is to define leadership, basically. Everyone seems to know it when they see it, but it's very difficult to pinpoint a definition. Ironically, even though here we are at the end of a semester that's focused largely on leadership communication. And then this slide provides a summary of the contrast that these authors invoke between traditional and indigenous models of leadership. In discussing traditional models of leadership, the author talks about, quote, old images of heroic individualism. I think that language resonates with some of the images that show more traditional images or depictions of leadership on the slides at the beginning of this lecture. So now moving into the second reading for week 13. When you signed up for this class, I bet you never expected you'd be learning about peanut farming in Uganda. I actually came across this article through some research I was doing a couple years ago as part of an interdisciplinary project related to global peanut agricultural practices. I find this article so interesting in relation to global STEM leadership because it exposes us to some new ways to think about scientific knowledge production. And getting more specifically into the subject matter of the article, this slide shows a few pictures of the molds called aflatoxins that can grow on certain kinds of crops. As explained in the article, it is these molds, a couple of species in particular, that lead to the production of aflatoxins. These are naturally occurring byproducts of these molds, as stated in your article, and as long as the levels of aflatoxin remain low, there's not any harm to humans. This slide shows a few pictures of the molds that grow on certain kinds of crops. As explained in your article, it is these molds, a couple of species in particular, that lead to the production of aflatoxins. These are naturally occurring byproducts of these molds, as stated in your article, and as long as the levels of aflatoxin remain low, there is not any harm to humans. As shown in this slide, aflatoxins can sometimes reach dangerously high levels, depending on how the crops are harvested, stored, and processed. At high levels, they can cause diseases in humans, including liver cancer and in livestock. think this infographic kind of illustrates why this is a scientific subject that cannot be studied only in the laboratory. Getting involved with the people who are actually involved in peanut farming, as we see in the qualitative study reported in this article, is an essential aspect of leadership in this area if we truly want to understand how to arrive at food storage practices that are safe and feasible, and especially if we want to find effective ways to educate the men and women who implement such practices on a daily basis. So moving on to reading 3 for week 13. I don't usually assign my own research as required reading in a course, but this article seems especially relevant. My co-author, Dr. Hillary Graham, is a former PhD advisee who now works as marketing manager at a biotechnology company in Austin. But when we started this study, our goal was to gain a deeper understanding of the unique challenges that non-native English-speaking authors face when conducting scientific and medical research, and especially when trying to publish their results. We expected these challenges to arise because of their struggles with the English language. We were really surprised to find something quite different. Most of the authors knew how to write and think about science only in English, so the challenges they discussed had little to do with language and much more to do with access to resources. To capture these struggles, which are really largely economic struggles, we use Bourdieu's theory of capital, including both cultural and social capital. And then finally, the second article for week 14. This article addresses the question that's indicated here in this slide, an especially appropriate question as we near the end of the course, and also perhaps especially appropriate for a world in which employees move around more than ever before, from one organization to another, or working from a distance, combining work with school through distance education opportunities, and so on. As we wrap up this semester, you might consider the 3 identities discussed in this article: social identity, relational identity, and personal identity, and how these have altered for you as a leader or professional throughout the semester, hopefully partly as a result of this course. And then this next article circles back, the second article for week 14 circles back to a topic we addressed in one of our very first readings this semester, the topic of millennials in the workplace and leadership strategies that are most effective with employees in this generational cohort. Through a survey and series of interviews, the authors of this study actually debunk the notion that managers should consider an employee's generational cohort in deciding which leadership strategies to use with that employee. Rather, these authors suggest employees should be considered on an individual basis. So that is it for my Unit 4 overview lecture. I hope you enjoy this last group of readings, these last 2 weeks. You're going to have some discussion forums that get you thinking about this and hopefully kind of also help you tie up a lot of the threads we've been discussing this semester. Also, depending on when you're watching this lecture, you might have already turned in your Eliminating Jargon report, or you might be working hard on that right now. In any case, I hope you have a great week, and I have really enjoyed working through all of these readings with you this semester. Thanks.